So why don't we go ahead and get started, as everybody is here early. So
Okay.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. Um, and I will need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second? I do need a second.
Mr. Moody?
Oh, I didn't hear Mr. Moody. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
I'm sorry, I think Mr. Moody may have dropped off the call.
Oh, yes, it looks like.
Aye.
I'll say aye too, if it's allowed.
Okay, so now we have three.
Yes, Mr. Allen can stand in ex officio.
As I described him as a wild card, yes. So we've approved the minutes. We'll go to the action items and the water master plan study task order. Let's go ahead with that.
Thank you. So as he brings that up, I'm Darren Geldert. I manage our planning team here at Loudon Water. And this is to ask for your approval for a water system master plan. This is going to be very similar to the wastewater collection system master plan that you saw last month. Andrew Beatty, that my colleague, is going to lead that one, and I will lead this one. And we'll actually probably be bringing a reclaimed master plan a little later this year. Ambitious year for the planning team. Why isn't it clicking? Go ahead. Okay, there we go. So this should look familiar. The process that we're going to go through is very similar to all planning processes. And we are actively actually working on demand and growth projections right now. We've had our team looking at all of our AMI data, our SCADA data, growth data from the county, from what we know internally, from what COG is projecting, and trying to piece all that together to get the best projections we have. We're getting near an end of that little piece. And that's been done basically through the wastewater collection system planning, but we can use it for water too. We're also in the process of updating our model. We have an all pipes hydraulic model of our system that we regularly update and use. We use it internally for operational calibration, but we also are going to use it a lot for the master planning. And so we go through kind of an annual update. The 2024 update's basically done. But this process, and we're going to spend a lot of time in this project to really calibrate it and really think through exactly how it all works. We haven't done that for a while in great detail. Then we'll take that, allocate all those future demands to our model and start looking at, well, where do we have capacity constraints? And then what are the solutions? And these solutions could be storage, could be pumps, could be transmission mains. We'll look at a variety of options to lead to that a series of recommended improvements. It's a very standard process and it works well, but we haven't done it for a while for the whole system, and that's why we need to kind of do it now. Oops, too many. So why master planning? We often do plans related to small developments or individual areas, but this one can really help us answer the big questions about the whole system as to where we have constraints. We know there's a lot of growth, for instance, in the JLMA, and we've studied that area specifically, but we need to make sure that it ties into the rest of our system and can meet all the growth throughout our system. So kind of, can the existing system meet those future demands? And then what's going to be the most effective way to meet the demands and to operate the system going forward? And also in that process, we'll also be looking at, well, what kind of emergencies, what kind of resiliency do we need to build into the system to make sure we're always there for people? Then as we look at those capital improvements, we need to look really closely at what are the scope, what are the triggers for those capital improvements. So we make sure that we spend our money wisely and we get the most efficient, effective system going forward. And then we're also going to work a bit on documenting that and building better tools to help share that knowledge. With our internal Power BI teams and some other GIS tools that we have now, that really helps the communication through our system. So hopefully this whole process leads to some really good analysis and helps us make the best decisions going forward. And we can also then communicate that with our internal teams and with you and with the public as needed. So since our last master plan, a ton of things have changed, and you're very aware of most of this. The general plan changed. Obviously, that kind of reassigned some things to be transition policy area. The JLMA came to us. Other additions to our service area were actually the western lands from the airport. There are some parcels there near the Red Hill Road area with the schools. They've changed policy classifications, so the growth projections have changed. Obviously, data centers are kind of a big unknown and big, hard to plan for development, because while we know many sites are data centers, we don't necessarily know up front, are they going to be air cooled or water cooled or reclaim cooled? But we're seeing much larger developments recently and a lot more redevelopment proposals. So that's going to challenge us to make sure that we get the best possible projection that we can. And then we're taking advantage of all the technical advancements that we've had. I love when Mike Beardsley kind of says, we're not doing a digital transformation. We just keep on doing the digital, improvements all the time. So that includes taking advantage of that AMI, which is our metering. In our metering now, we collect, for every meter, 85,000 meters, hourly data. That creates close to 1 billion data points every year. We're trying to pull that apart and make sure that we can use that as best possible to look at our usage patterns and hopefully predict the future a little as best we can.
Smart.
So the specific scope of work for this task is really to kind of bring in our consultant, let them collect, review our existing data, pulling all that data out of SCADA, out of AMI. We've done some of that will continue. They're going to go do some field calibration, make sure that the model really represents how we use the system. That will take actually a lot of meetings too with our operations staff to learn how they operate the system throughout the year. Then we'll develop a number of criteria and scenarios to help make sure that we address our future needs, including a certain amount of criticality and being able to deal with emergencies, building that resiliency into the system. We'll look at a number of alternatives. Don't know exactly how many yet. It'll depend kind of how that growth plays out, but those alternatives will probably include options for additional storage, upgraded or new transmission mains, perhaps looking a little bit at how we supply our system. Currently, we have the two major connections to Fairfax and Trap Rock. We'll look at how those balance in our system to best provide supply to the whole area. Then we'll develop those capital improvements with triggers, and we'll help then give that to the rest of our team so they can look at that. And of course, we will get the digital model back with us. We can use that internally, and we will also then be sharing that with everyone. As I mentioned, we've kind of started the flows and projections under a different task order, but we can use that for the water master plan that we really started about a year ago, and we're getting some good data out of that now. We've been updating the model a little bit too, but really this project hopefully will kick off in about a month, assuming everything gets approved. Through the summer, we'll be calibrating and building those scenarios. And then through the fall and winter, we'll be reviewing that with all our teams to make sure we really meet our demands and develop that draft and final in time to integrate all of that into hopefully the next year's CIP and into our whole planning. This is a fairly large task order for planning, but it includes pretty much all that scope I just talked through. The bulk of the expense is building those scenarios, running the model, looking at the results, and making sure that it makes sense for our system. Because we have multiple pressure zones, multiple storage tanks, pumps, we have a lot of criteria out there. We have to kind of carefully review all of those options and make sure it works for us. And in the end, we'll develop those kind of capacity tools and the reporting that we need. This fits within our budget. We kind of knew it was coming. This is something we have done regularly. We haven't really completed this since 2018, and some of the data for that was even a little bit earlier. So it's definitely due for us to do this. And I really think, listening a little bit to yesterday's presentation and knowing that, funding may be a bit of a challenge, this is one of the great tools that we have to help guide us and make sure that we do the right projects at the right time. With that, I'll give you a motion and ask for any questions.
All right, I do have a couple of questions.
Sure.
I think some of the other members do. This is all going to be done with internal resources, or how much?
I mean, we will hire.
Going to go to the engineering group? Yeah.
I mean, Carollo engineers we're planning to hire them for the $500,000 contract.
Okay, so a lot of that analysis that you'll be doing will also include our people. So
yes,
it's just it's not just going to be Carlo going to do the report. This motion is just for the external part of it. We're going to be doing a lot of internal work. Okay, good.
Yes.
Just want to be sure. And then you have 6 months for that after all the data collection to do that analysis. Is that going to be enough time?
We believe so. We've been working with Carollo for a while on some other projects, and they have a good team. I think that will work. The challenge always comes with trying to you put together meetings with the right staff on our side and the right staff on their side. That will be a challenge, but I think I've pushed them to do this, and I think they can do it.
I believe Charles has a question. And then then Keith. And then Jack.
Thank you, Chair Bonfils, and thank you, Darren, for the presentation. 2 questions. One is, can you give an example of what the scenario building, what that would look like, and then how that crosswalks into the CIP process? You mentioned you heard yesterday's conversation about CIP efficiency. Can you just give me an example of that? And then does any of this master planning address the community systems end of things?
So this master plan is focused on our central system. It does not address the community systems. The community systems, actually, for the water side, we did a planning study, I think it was 2 years ago now, a year and a half ago. So they're very separate. So this really won't touch them. In terms of the scenarios, what those are, it's basically we'll do scenarios in a couple different ways. One will be to look at different demands. We often look at what is our average day demand to make sure we know how the system runs. We'll look at a max day demand. We'll add on top of that fire flows. So we will look at those different scenarios at different times. We'll also look at some of that seasonal variations that we see in our system. Obviously, the most critical time is that max day or that max week in the heat of the summer. That's challenges our system the most, but we have to make sure that it works for all of those different alternatives. We will also look at perhaps some different growth patterns. If we wind up getting more redevelopment or more growth in certain parts of our system, there will be options as to how we supply that. For example, I'll just pick like the Western Lands area. If they changed, we kind of know their plans now, but if they changed and they needed a lot more water, we would have the option of supplying them more from the south, kind of from our Route 50, or from the north, or perhaps even from TRAP, which would be a little difficult to do, but we will have some different options in how we supply, how we move water through the system. If we decide that we need new storage, we could obviously, or we could put storage perhaps more in the southern part of our system or in the northern part of our system. So there'll be lots of different options that we will look through to try and figure out how best to serve all of our customers. And then that will lead toward development of potential projects or projects that we think have triggers. So oftentimes when we look at capital projects in the master plan, we will say this project is needed once we hit a demand of 60 million gallons a day or some level. And at that point, then we need to review it and make sure it still makes sense and then move through that CIP.
Thank you, Darren.
You're welcome.
Keith?
Yes, good morning, Darren, and thank you for the presentation. Yes, Darren, I had a question. You had mentioned that one of the challenges you're dealing with master planning with the data centers is the fact that you were, at this point with the plans, we're not sure of whether they were air-cooled or I believe water-cooled.
Yeah.
What are the sense of numbers that you're going to be dealing with data centers is the first question.
So, I mean,
The
we
total
have,
number.
yeah, so we have projections that the county has a pipeline of potential development. A lot of those data centers do come in and do kind of due diligence with us. They will ask, you know, generally we're going to put something here. What might it take to serve us? So we have an internal list, an internal idea of who's coming. We also know generally, it's not always true, but certain developers or certain owners tend to use water or tend to use air. That's not always true, but it's one of the factors that we use. But I'll admit it's an uncertainty for us, and it will lead to a bit of contingency planning for us because they have in the past changed. We thought there was a large, almost 800,000 square foot data center that was going to be water cooled. And as a water cooled data center with 800,000 square feet, that might use 500,000 gallons of water a day. But instead, they have switched and they will be air cooled, which uses maybe 20,000 gallons of water a day. So the scale of the difference is tremendous, and that leads us. That's our biggest challenge, probably, in terms of distributing that future demand and making sure we have a good handle on what that is.
So is the challenge the scale of the individual data centers or the number of data centers, or is it a combination of both? Just trying to understand.
It's probably a combination of both, but it's probably more just the overall number of data centers. Our system is quite resilient, and the area where most of the data centers are landing, other than JLMA, is kind of in the central part of our system. That's the best networked, has the largest pipes already. It's kind of the backbone of our system. So in that area, we generally have the infrastructure to supply them. If they start showing up on the edges of our system, like the challenge of the JMA was partly because it was out on the far edge of our system. We didn't have the infrastructure stretched out there. If for some reason they started showing up in the TPA or in the rural area, I don't expect that. But if they did, that would be a huge challenge for us because of where they're located. So yes, there are individual sites that might be a challenge, but it's mostly the altogether issue.
And do you have an estimated number or a rough estimate you can provide us to the number of data centers you're dealing with right now?
I don't think I have a great number for that.
Okay. And then you brought up one other point I wanted to ask you. You mentioned that with the plan, I'm not sure if I'm phrasing it correctly, but you'd mentioned that you're revisiting the plans, meaning or resubmission of. Can you elaborate on that? I'm just trying to, for my own understanding, what does that entail? I believe you mentioned.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what I said.
Okay.
I guess perhaps we have an existing water master plan that was developed in 2018. And
Aaron, it wasn't related to our master plan. It was related to the data centers resubmitting. I believe.
okay.
Yeah.
So we are seeing now more sites that are redevelopment sites. So there's a lot of existing flex industrial one-level warehouse stuff in Sterling or in this area. We're seeing more and more requests to tear those down and put something new up.
I was interpreting that the data centers were putting in new plans to change their data centers, but you're talking about changing the use of the property, the land, the development.
Yes. Now, it's a little bit of both because there are times when we know areas are zoned data center. We'll get a landowner start the permitting process without maybe having an owner. And so as the process evolves, they can change and change from water to air, change sizing, change other things on us. But our land development team keeps a really good handle on that. And at that point, we're pretty much ready for them no matter what they bring.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much, Darren.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jack? Then Terry?
Morning, Darren. Good presentation. Thank you very much. I had two questions. One is, the urban planning area. Building heights are higher than what the properties in the urban planning area were zoned for. How do you discern between the two, between what was zoned and what the urban planning area comprehensive plan calls for?
I mean, I guess we're leaning a little bit on what the county's projecting there in terms of growth for population and employment. So that they've developed, and they're actually just about done with new TAS level traffic, small area development plans or reviews with population and growth. So we lean on them for that. We've also looked at what the potential, for the land is. We looked through the new kind of zoning or land use proposals. Again, generally, those urban areas are in the middle of our system, fairly well looped and supplied already. So they don't pose a huge concern for us. If the county, changed and kind of went like Tyson's, where they just said, build as big as you want, that would be a bigger challenge, but I think this is within reach for us.
And the second question is, at the master plan level, do you do a fire flow sensitivity, fire flow coverage for the whole system now that we're approaching 450, 500,000 inhabitants?
Yes. So we look at our whole central service area. We will review fire flow, and we will distribute that. I mean, we kind of start with that worst case, 3,000 gallons a minute everywhere, and make sure the system can supply that. We know there are some higher elevations in some of the residential areas that we couldn't reach that much, but we can reach the required amounts of 1,750 gallons per minute in those areas. So yeah, that is part of the scenarios that they will review.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Mentioning that fire flow, we never quite know where they're going to put a high school or a middle school, do we?
Yeah, schools can be a little bit of a challenge.
Yes, yes, the requirements are more. So
yeah,
good. Terry, did you have any questions?
Nope, I'm good.
Righty. Then if we're in agreement, will somebody read the motion?
Yeah, this is Keith. I'll go ahead and read it.
Thank you.
I move the board award a task order for the water system master plan to Corolla Engineers for an estimated cost of $531,700 with an approximate 5% contingency to be controlled by the general manager for a total authorized budget of $558,000. Additional costs will require board approval.
Would you like that to be on consent or on?
Yeah,
action?
Consent.
Consent, please. Okay. Do we have a
Second.
second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. I think we have.
Aye. Just wanted to.
Aye.
Yeah, good. Got them all.
That used to be being virtual again.
Yeah,
Gotta get
it's
If
we're
you
back
need me,
virtual.
I.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. And I'm really looking forward to this plan, and thank you, Darren, for that, and all the staff that will be working on this, and our contractor. This is important work.
Well, good morning, everybody. 20
Morning,
minutes
Tom.
after 8. That's really early for me to be presenting here. This is the capital spending summary through February. So because invoicing typically lags the work done by about a month, this is what we paid out through February. So it kind of represents just the work that was done most likely through January. The projected amount was 12 million, and our actuals are at about 10.4, so about 86% of the projections. So early on in the year, not much to say about it here at the moment, but if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Looks good. I don't have any questions. Any other members have questions?
no questions for me.
Excellent. Thank you all.
Thank you. Great. Then looking for the agenda.
It's just the tentative agenda and then the next meeting date of Thursday, April 24th, and adjourn meeting.
That's the easy part. So there was also a list of other topics in that agenda that I saw. So what do we have coming up for the April meeting?
Savita, would you like to go through it, or would you like me to?
You can just post it in case.
I think
anybody
if you
has
want to
questions.
just see what, you maybe scroll up on the agenda to see what's on the list. It should be, I think, the item right before, right?
Here it is.
There you go. There you
There
go.
they are.
Yeah. So we have a number of some design task orders. We also have the award of the construction contract for the trap standby generator, which was an item that you all approved. Gosh, I think it was in 2023. I think the design was approved in 2023. So the generator had a really long lead time, and so it's actually going to be shipped to us here in a couple of months. And then mostly design, so one construction and then a couple of design task orders. So
This is good. So we have a pretty good work plan coming. So that's great.
yes, I think April, May, and June are going to be quite busy for CIP committee.
Great. We appreciate that. I think that takes care of it. Does anybody else have any questions? Thank you, Savita.
Sure.
Any closing comments, Terry? So then this will be a record meeting.
I am
Record
good.
short.
Way to run the meeting, Jim.
Yes. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, I'll make the
So
motion.
moved.
So moved. We have a second. All
I'll
in
second.
favor?
Aye.
I.
Aye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good day.
You as well.
Mhm.